Welcome to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast, where we help you in the LGBTQ plus community find a safe and affordable retirement place. Join Mark Goldstein as he interviews others who live in gay-friendly places around the globe. Learn about the climate, cost of living, healthcare, crime and safety, and more. Now, here's your host, Mark Goldstein.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Where Do Gays Retire podcast. And today we're going to be visiting Porto, Portugal with Joe and Sal DeCock-Rangel. And they're going to tell you everything about Porto and their story, how they got there, and what they're doing now. So I'll tell you a little bit about Joe and Sal. They both met in Chicago in 2005. Joe is originally from Illinois and Sal was born and raised in Mexico City. Prior meeting, Joe lived in Chicago for over 15 years and Sal lived there for over 4 years. In 2014, they left Chicago, and since then, they've lived in Phoenix, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Houston, Texas. Tired of the corporate BS and bureaucracy, they decided to take a leap of faith and aim for an early retirement in Europe. This became a reality in November of 2020 when they packed a few suitcases and embarked in search of a new life in Portugal with their two adorable Labrador retrievers, Gaby and Uriel. In 2021, they cemented their immigrant commitment by acquiring a small condo in Porto, and since then they have been welcomed in their adoptive city free of stress or judgment, enjoying life, local wines, cheeses, foods, as well as the wonderful hospitality and hundreds of years of culture and history that this beautiful country has to offer. Okay, and before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Porto. So Porto, Portuguese Oporto, city and port, is in northern Portugal. The city lies along the Douro River, 2 miles from the river's mouth on the Atlantic Ocean and 175 miles north of Lisbon. World famous for its port wine, Porto is Portugal's second largest city and is the commercial and industrial center for the zone north of the Mondego River. The historic center of Porto was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1996. So without further ado, I'll introduce you, and Joe and Sal, I want to welcome you to the podcast. But our first question, can you tell the audience where you moved from and why did you choose to live in Porto? And which cities did you visit before you decided on Porto?
Well, Mark, first, thank you very much for your hospitality and for having us on this podcast. I think it's a great opportunity to make people aware of different alternatives outside the United States, number one. And number two, we appreciate anybody that is listening at this podcast and has some interest to have a different lifestyle in outside the United States. So our process was, as you mentioned, very simple. We were tired of all the corporate and all the bureaucracy and sometimes silliness of the United States. And we decided that we wanted to get away of all that stuff. And we started looking at Europe. And at that point, due to the conditions and the visa processing hurdles, we, after analyzing several sites and several documentation, we decided that Portugal was the right place for us to be in Europe.
Yeah, and
okay, great.
I was going to say, yeah, we looked at multiple alternatives and Porto just seemed to feel right for us.
What do you think made you decide on Porto out of all of the places that you visited? What other places, by the way, did you visit before deciding on Porto?
So we thought of, I mean, there's multiple places that we thought of. Since Sal's from Mexico, we thought of Mexico City or Puerto Vallarta. We love Rome, so we looked at Rome. We looked at a couple spots in Spain.
Valencia,
Madrid.
Yeah.
But it's when you start looking at the cost of living, when you look at the visa requirements, when you look at crime, with safety, with healthcare. Portugal just ended up checking all the boxes, and we're kind of very methodical about it. And we looked at all the alternatives, and of the top five, 3 cities in Portugal were in the top 5. So we realized we're heading in the right direction.
I must to add to what Joe said, this wasn't a light decision. Like every life-changing decisions that you make, we didn't take this lightly. We took time to think about that, and Joe is very methodical about this. So we did a spreadsheet and we ponder actually the points on each stop, like Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, and some of the factors, as Joe mentioned, it was cost of living, access to medical health, safety, especially for a gay couple, and that we wanted to be sure that we're going to be safe, we're going to be respected, we're going to be welcome. So we did this spreadsheet with ponder points, and Porto ended up with like 90 points out of our 100-point scale that we have on that, while Mexico or Italy or Spain end up with like 50 or 40 points or below that. So it was a well thought process. It wasn't a light process on that, and that's how we end up here. And then even though coming here, going back to the second part of your question, when we arrived here, we weren't sure if we're going to stay in Porto, or we're going to stay in Lisbon, or we're going to stay in the Algarve, which is the south of Portugal. We didn't know exactly what we want to do, but when we came and visit Porto for a longer stay, we just fall in love with Porto, with the people, and actually the cost of living. It was a lot easier to get an apartment where we wanted to get it, close to the things that we wanted here, than in Lisbon or in Algarve.
Gotcha. Very interesting how you did that with the spreadsheet, because I would do the same thing. I would just list different destinations. That's me too. Methodical. And I'm like, okay, does this check off? Does this check off? Or this place didn't check off? So I hear you when you.
It's like, it's an interesting process, because some of your listeners, they might struggle with this. And in a way, you take a leap of faith when you are leaving your comfort zone. You are taking a leap of faith, especially when you're moving a foreign country. I mean, I moved from Mexico into the United States, and then from the United States here. So in a way, every time that you move in and you're leaving your little comfort zone, your little bubble, it's a leap of faith, and many things can go wrong, but also many things go right. But then you just have to take the best of the experience and then move on. And that's why you have to think about this process, and that's why you have to be convinced, so you don't have second thoughts around the road.
Right. I mean, it's a life-changing thing. It's not very lightly that you pick up and leave your home country that you've lived in all of your life and just pick up and go to another country. But you know what? The world is different these days. So you're able to do that. It used to be, well, you might have been limited to certain places, but now why limit yourself when you can do it?
Yeah.
So geographically speaking, we said Porto was located north in Portugal. And so do you have beaches in Porto as well? And are they located anywhere near the city center? And can you give us just a little idea, and the audience an idea of how big really Porto is, where exactly it's located as far as city center and beaches are concerned?
So to have an idea, the littoral of Porto, I think is something like 12,000 kilometers or something like that of littoral of ocean. Or don't quote me on that. I'm not remembering if it's correct, or it's something like that. It's about 12,000 kilometers. So it's a huge littoral area. So it's on the west side of the Iberian Peninsula. So pretty much Porto has all beaches all around. I mean, Portugal has all beaches all around. So here in Porto, we are very close to beaches and a seaport, a very important seaport. And all these locations are very advantageous, because then you get, of course, great seafood. You get tons of very nice beaches, very beautiful beaches. And if you don't like the beaches here, like in Matosinhos, which is one of the beaches, or Gaia, which from where we are close to the downtown of Porto is about 10-minute drive, or a 15-20-minute ride on a boat. Then you can drive another 40 minutes and go to another beaches that they have clothing optional beaches, and they are very nice, and very unpopulated beaches that you can get their stuff. Mind you, the beaches here, they don't have the infrastructure that you will see in the United States or in some places like Spain or Italy. in which you have a shower, you have toilets, you have restaurants. Here, the beaches are completely unspoiled and they don't have all these services. So most of the people, they go out to the beaches and they bring their own chairs, their own umbrella, their own food. So it's more like a picnic type of stuff. It might get very windy on the beaches, so you have to buy some corrals that they kind of like protect you from the wind. Otherwise, the wind with the sun, it will hit you hard. But it's just different styles, so it's a different way to do.
Yeah. And you're on the Atlantic side,
That's
right?
correct.
You're on the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tell us about the climate. How are the summers? Are they hot and humid? Are they dry? Are they rainy? Do you get more rain than other parts of Portugal?
So multiple things with that. So in the summer, as hot as it could get is maybe in the 90s, maybe 100 for a couple of days. But on the normal day, like today, we're in August and it's 75 to 80. So that would be typical a lot of times.
Beautiful.
What's in the summer. The rainy season is in the winter, a couple months. There's rain pretty much every single day. And it could get as cold as almost freezing, but rarely gets to freezing. Usually it's just rainy and cold. And it's heavily for a couple months during the winter. But pretty much once you're beyond maybe February, March, then it's not as bad. It starts warming up and it's a lot nicer as far as the weather goes. So
would you compare it at all to Seattle in the US?
So I think it's like Seattle or San Francisco. It's a blend of the two to me. It could be Seattle for the amount of rain sometimes during the winter, but I think San Francisco a lot of times because it's very typical that you're out in the middle of the day and you're fine in shorts without a jacket, but if you don't have a jacket at night, you're going to be cool.
Get chilly.
Yep. So that's why it always reminds you of San Francisco. It's very typical. You have to have kind of all the rain gear or the jackets or whatever ready to go at any given time.
But also, mind you, we have seen a little bit of shift in weather, like everywhere in the world right now. Like this past winter was very dry, and actually we are now on a drought alert. So we are having some issues with water supply. And because the rain season last December, January, we didn't have any rain. We have rain like 1 or 2 days versus having rain every day. Even like last November, it was like pretty much the end of November, and we were in the beach swimming in the ocean without a problem. So it was a beautiful day. We were like about 30 degrees. So that's another thing. I think eventually there's going to be a shift in weather that we are going to start seeing, and we are seeing right now. So hopefully we are praying for rain this winter, because that's actually what fuels the city and gives the water capacity for the city.
Right. Something that everybody really has to think about these days when even relocating to a place. And I never thought in my life would I even put that in the equation. But climate change is a very important thing. You really have to think about that. Is the place that I'm looking to go to, do they have wildfires? Yep. Is it really hot? Is it dry? Is there a drought? I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and the water that we get is drying up. So something has to be done. I don't know exactly what they're going to do at this point, and people say, well, it won't happen in our lifetime. But you know what? People said that about climate change, that people denied climate change, but it's really real and something to think about. And when I move to places, I kind of Google places also and say, what places are free of natural disasters or free of, but it's becoming very difficult to pinpoint one of those places. So, just something that
it's interesting what you say too, because we're so close to a lot of the wineries. There's tons of wineries in Portugal, and there's quite a few in Porto area. And there's one winery we'll visit, and actually a couple of wineries we visited, and they will tell us like they're definitely concerned about climate change. They're seeing how they have to adapt to planting additional varieties of grapes in order to know that in the near future of 5-10 years, things are going to change a lot, where it's not the same climate as it has been. So they have to be able to have varieties that are able to handle a lot less rain and just a lot more drought and heat.
Stress.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing in Porto, I imagine, because wine is so prevalent there and wineries. So it's a big thing to think about as well. So does Porto have a large expat community? And how have you found making friends there? And speaking of making friends, that's when we get into some questions about the language as well. So,
To answer the first part of your question, definitely Porto doesn't have it has big expat community, but it's not a lot of Americans. It's more people from the UK, or actually Americans. It's like a 4% or 3% of the expat pool here, so it's very little. It's not that many. So Americans haven't discovered Portugal yet. So they're still very unspoiled on that end with the American influence on that part. Say that Lisbon is still a little bit more Americans presence. It's a bigger city. So, but there's still a very strong presence both in Lisbon and Porto, and of course in the Algarve in the south is majorly where all the expats they congregate there because they like the weather and the ocean, the proximity to the ocean there. So now say
so
that
do,
in our case we move right around the pandemic. So as we mentioned in our introduction, we moved here in November 2020 when it was like the heart of the pandemic. So most of the people that we have met here is been through Facebook groups, like expat groups and stuff. So we've been lucky to
yeah.
find very nice people and to meet some other people. But you know how as you meet people, sometimes it's like kissing frogs. You have to kiss a couple of frogs to know who you are more empathy with that, and you learn to have more connection with some people and stuff. And then sometimes you just
Exactly.
learn on the hard way and then you move on. We're still in the
Yep.
process to trying to integrate ourselves into the Portuguese society with meeting more local people. But what we have found is like in the apartment building where we have most of our neighbors, which are native Portuguese, the neighborhood where we live is pretty much Portuguese from Porto, is very welcoming. And we have a couple of neighbors that we have had them over for dinner and you have very good conversations. Most of them, they speak English, so language is not a barrier. In my case, I speak Portuguese. I can handle this stuff, and that's been helping us in a good way at transition. So that part has been just easier for us just to connect with people. People here are very easy. We walk around the block and people know us already, even people that you don't think they notice you, and then they ask how you been, or like we were gone a few weeks back for vacation around Europe. We were gone for like 3 weeks, and when we come back, it's like, what's going on? You guys okay? Is everything fine? So you notice
That's
that
nice.
people are like what happened? Where you were? So you notice that people pay attention to you, and definitely language is not an issue. As a side note, and being a Mexican immigrating on United States, I can tell you firsthand experience. Portuguese are more forgiving about speaking a language than Americans are. So me having a struggle trying to explain myself, or even if my Portuguese is broken or is not good, people here are
Hmm.
more appreciative that you are trying to speak the language. While in the United States, they expect that you're going to speak like a native and they're going to understand every single thing of what you say. So
Right.
that
It's
makes you
kind of
feel more
looked down
welcome
in the
and stuff.
U.S. It's kind of looked down in the U.S. if an immigrant doesn't speak English or doesn't speak fluent English, whereas places in Europe, such as Portugal, like you're saying, they say that people are forgiving. And that brings me to another thing. They also say that even the people in Porto are friendlier maybe than the people in Lisbon. But I think the reason might be because Lisbon is such a big city and it's so hurried and rushed. I'm kind of like thinking of my roots in New York City. So would you agree with that? Or do you just feel that they're really a wonderful bunch of people?
I mean, overall, I think Portuguese people are definitely friendly people, but we definitely know the difference between Lisbon and Porto. I mean, Lisbon, like you said, it's a more international city. I think there's a more of a hustle and bustle, and people, it's less personal. Where in Porto, like Salad said, when you're around the neighborhood or you're even walking around some of the tourist areas, there's familiarity. People are always smiling. People are always looking at you and wanting to help you if they think you're lost. There's just different approach to people as they're in their daily lives, where I think in Lisbon, like you said, it's just more cosmopolitan
and hurry.
Yeah, you're in a hurry.
It's funny because we were talking about all these subtle, not so subtle difference yesterday, though. Like people here, they always say, well, I'm not trying to speak English because I don't speak good English. And then they start talking to you and their English is flawless, but they are very self-conscious about that stuff. And they make a true good effort to try to speak the language and to try to adapt yourself and to make you feel welcome on that stuff. Also, another strong difference that we were laughing yesterday about that is like people here are very touchy, very touchy. There is not a lot of personal space. Whereas in United States, everybody wants to keep their space.
Their own
Here,
space.
they are like really in your face, and like when they pass, they touch your shoulder or they touch your lower back or they give you a little spank on the rear, you know.
Oh, maybe I'd like
Yeah,
that.
But I think it's more in Porto, not in
it's
Lisbon.
more in Porto, but we experience that more here in Porto than in Lisbon. In Lisbon is more like they are more like business-like type of stuff, while here in Porto are they more welcoming stuff. And that goes back to what you mentioned before. When we decide on where to live, one of the things that we thought about it, we wanted to be in like a Portuguese neighborhood, though. And here in the place where we are living, we are in a Portuguese neighborhood where there is not a lot of expats. So that forces you also to be immersed in the community, to be immersed in a place where you are more exposed to the Portuguese culture. And then on that way, it also makes you feel more welcome because it forces you to be a part of the community, though. So that was a very important decision for us to make on that way.
Kind of forces you to learn the language real quick too.
Yeah.
Because that, to me, that's an important thing. So next year I'll be traveling and looking for places outside of the US as well. At this point, we're kind of looking at Spain, and before we even go, we know no Spanish, but we are trying our best to learn. My husband's doing a better job than I am, actually, because I'm working full time, and he's not, so he has a little bit more time than I do. But we still want to, again, just like it is, we would, if we're going to move to another country, we're considered immigrants. I mean, expats is a nice word for it, but immigrants is what we are. And I want to immerse myself in the culture and in the language as much as I possibly can, because I'm their guest, or we're their guest. It makes a big difference.
Yep.
It's very important, that subtle difference that you mentioned, because we were talking that with some friends that are here, the difference between expat and immigrant. An expat can always go back to their place that they are. They have always that safety net. An immigrant, you have the commitment to stay in the place where you are, and you are going to make it work no matter what. You're not going to be concerned about the difficulties that you face. You are going to be there. So in our case also, we consider immigrants here in Portugal, because no matter what, we will make it work, and we are here to stay in that way.
How long ago did you learn the Portuguese language? And is that a requirement to become a citizen?
Yes,
too?
it is. You have to have a basic language. You have to have what they call A2, which is a basic understanding on the language. In my case, because of my line of business, I was doing business in Brazil before. So I had to speak the Portuguese, and I had to conduct the business in Portuguese. Joe just finished about 2 months ago. He's government sponsor, because the government paid class for you.
Yeah.
And you go and take it you pay like 20 euros for like an 8-month class. And they give you your diploma of participation, because that's what we call them. And then you got your A2 for the hours that you endure during the class. And then he's ready to get that. So in the case that we want after 5 years to apply for the citizenship, now we can do it, both of us, without any problem.
Now, that's another good question that I'm going to have shortly about visas and citizenship. It seems like you just mentioned 5 years. That seems like a little shorter time than anywhere else.
Don't even get me going there with what it took me to get my green card and residence in the United States. So, because
I
That
can
was a
imagine.
14-year Calvary, so it was just too much.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The government truly wants people to immigrate here, so they make the process
Simple.
much simpler.
Easier.
Yeah.
Even though I understand there's bureaucracy everywhere, but it seems like when I talk to people from Portugal as opposed to like Spain, it seems like they make it a little bit easier and they kind of want you there.
Yeah.
And that's not just the visa process. That's, I think, everything incorporated in there. But
I was going to say one of the reasons why we said, not in addition to the process, but with the visa type that we have, we could be self-sufficient living here, but also we have the capability of working. And actually, I went back to work a couple months ago, working remotely. I wouldn't be able to do that in Spain or Italy, some of these other areas. It would have to be a different type of visa. It restricts you. It doesn't allow you to work. We would just have to be retired, and that would be it. The type of visa we have.
right, non-lucrative visa in Spain.
So it allows you to do a lot more here. It's a lot more flexible.
Gotcha. Well, we'll come back to that, but let's learn about the community. So is living in a LGBTQ community important to you? Do they have a neighborhood, or is everything pretty much integrated, and is it just live and let live, like people don't care?
For us, to be honest, it wasn't that important to be part of the LGBTQ community. And that's because, we have experience when we were in Chicago, we experienced Boys Town, and when we were living there for a little bit, and we have our fix out of that. So kind of like, for us, it was like a stage that you just grew up on that stuff and then just move on. For us, it was more important to be safe, to be respected, and to be accepted, no matter what you want. And that's why when we were in the United States, I told Joe there are certain states in the United States that I would never move at because I'm a gay Latino, and the last thing that I want is a cross burning in front of my front lawn.
There you go. You're talking to a gay Jew here.
Exactly, or being insulted or being disrespected in so many ways. So I think for us, the sense of being a part of an LGBT neighborhood is not as important as in your day-to-day life to be respected and to be recognized who you are and don't have to justify yourself for what you do or who you choose to live your life with. So that part of the portion on that, it wasn't that important for us. Say that when we came here to Portugal in general, people, they don't even bat an eye when you say, this is my husband. They don't even look like shocked or surprised or stuff. I've been telling this story to a couple of friends of ours. We went in last November in New York, and we go to a Marriott hotel, and it was a recognized chain. And we tell the lady, okay, we have this reservation. And she's like, well, but this has just one bed in the bedroom. I was like, yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. So we know. And I'm talking about big chain in New York City. I'm not talking about.
And I'm surprised. I'm shocked in New York, especially.
Yeah. So we were shocked too, though. Like, we make that reservation with one bed. We have a king size bed. That's what we ask. Are you sure it's just one bed? It's two of you. It's like married. We are married. So you feel like you have to justify in there. In contrast, here we went to a government office to get some documentation done. And of course, Joe doesn't speak Portuguese. So I'm telling the ladies, like, well, what is this guy and what is he doing here? I said, well, he's my husband and he needs all this paper and I need this paper too and blah, blah, blah. Oh, you two are a couple. Okay, good. Let me tell you, what is his passport? What is information? And blah, 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 blah,
Didn't
blah,
even
blah,
bat
blah,
an eye.
Oh, you have the docs. Blah, 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 blah. Here's your papers.
And you know what? I think the reason for neighborhoods in the U.S. are because of other people that are not fond of the LGBT community. And the neighborhoods are there to safety. Net and safety area. Here's another perfect example. When I lived in Florida in Tampa, my husband and I walked in just to walk into a brand new community that they were building, and they had a sales desk and everything. And we walked in on Valentine's Day, and the receptionist at the desk said, "Oh, hi, gentlemen. Are you here to purchase homes for your wives?" And we looked at each other and we're like, I just say right out, "Excuse me, we're married. Here's the ring." And she's like taken back. But that's the kind of mentality that we have here. And it's so refreshing to find out and discover that different places in different countries, it's not even a thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because we had the mentality when we first moved here, or was getting ready to move here. We were asking people, is there a gay doctor, or is there different neighborhoods, whatever.
Right.
And I think in Lisbon you find more so, like there's more of a neighborhood that's more where the gay bars are, and a lot of people may congregate. Definitely not in Porto. It's definitely just completely integrated. And people were telling us basically, like, people don't care. You're not going to find like specific gay areas at all, or gay doctors, things like that. It's just a different mentality here. People they just don't care. They're just like, no big deal.
They just say
Gay bars.
There are doctors, there are houses here, there's people. So, and people are more accepted. I mean, maybe in your face they're not going to say anything. Maybe when there are like on their closed doors, they might say, "Oh my gosh, these gay people" and stuff. But they don't show any displease or stuff. And also, Mark, let's be honest. Many companies, corporations, developers are cashing out on the gay factor. So when you have a gay neighborhood, it comes with a price. So it's very refreshing that you can buy anywhere in a city like Porto without having the gay factor on that. That is going to cost you an added money because of that commodity. So it's good to be seen as a person and not as a financial number.
And I was going to say too, in here, actually, human rights is part of the Constitution. It's so having the LGBT rights, people accept it as part of the Constitution, right? You have the right. You have all the rights as a person. You have rights for healthcare. All these things are a recent Constitution.
Which is in the Constitution.
Marriage is in the Constitution. They accept that for marriage in the Constitution. So it's all within early 70s that the Constitution became more democracy here. So it's very recent, and a lot of this is just kind of predetermined. I mean,
actually, so
how refreshing!
Yeah, it's so refreshing to be walking on the street and you see guys holding hands without nobody even batting an eye, and not being afraid of looking around who's gonna beat you or who's gonna yell at you. It's just so nice to see people. There is pretty much every other day we see guys holding hands, walking down the street and being happy. That makes better person. That makes better people. That makes healthier people.
Right. Your authentic self. There's no hiding. I'm all about that. I'm all about being my authentic self. If I can't be authentic, then I don't want to be where I am.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, tell the audience about the local economy. What's it like? Can you provide examples to our audience, such as housing costs, renting versus owning, electric bills, water bills, gases, and taxes? Do you rent or do you guys own?
Yeah. So we rented when we first got here, but it wasn't long. Once we moved to Porto, probably within 6 months of us coming to the country, we ended up buying a place.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah. So we knew at that point, we kind of did the math and said the longer we wait, we're just throwing money away. And we figured even if 2 years we had a place and we had to resell it, we would break even. So why not do it? And we knew for our commitment, we said we're going to stay for 5 years no matter what. So we knew at that point it made sense for us to do it. Overall, things are much more reasonable here, just overall cost of living. I mean, just to give you an idea, and this goes back to like healthcare, for example. So as an immigrant, as somebody who has a visa that's temporary, you're required by the government to have health insurance so you're not a drag on the economy, right? So if there's something major like cancer, HIV, any of the things that fall into a major category, you're going to be in the public healthcare system. That's just the way the system works. But they require you to have private insurance. And so for the two of us, a year for private insurance is 3,200?
No, 2,900.
2,900 euros. And right now it's about 1 for 1. So thinking about it, it's about $3,000 per year, not per month.
But that's what you pay for the policy. Now let's discuss what it covers. So, like we have our annual checkups all our labs covered for free. We don't have to pay anything for that. No co-payments, no deductibles, nothing. And includes dentist. It includes
Wow.
eye doctor, glasses, and stuff. So pretty much our eye consultation every year, our dentist checkups, cleaning, and stuff is covered for free. Well, or part of the policy, not for free, but part of the policy. And if we spend something extra, like Joe had to have an allergy doctor, and he ended up paying like 20 euros for the consultation total. So it's very cheap. One example that I like to mention to our friends is, in my case, I take high blood medication, high blood pressure medication.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States,
Yeah, me too.
my co-payment for the medication, it was $25 every month. Here, I bought 6 months of supply for €6, which is like about $7 for the whole medication. So I don't have to worry about that without prescription or without going to the doctor. I just go to the pharmacy and say I need my losartan, and then they get it to you.
That's what I use.
Internet service is cheap. We get high speed, what they call fiber internet here, for about €70 a month.
That includes the phone.
And that includes a phone line, our television, one landline, and another extra line for like wireless internet in case you are just going around and you need internet, like a hotspot. Yeah.
Wow. I pay like 110 just for internet.
Oh, we know. And that's because we screw up and we didn't do right because of the timing, we had to get our cell phone lines, which we are paying about another €50 for our unlimited all around Europe cell phone lines that we use. So overall, we are paying about 120 for everything, internet, cell phones, and stuff a month. And once our contracts are up next year, we can bundle all that, and for like €80, we can have everything: internet, television, cell phones, and stuff, unlimited for both of us. So text, message, internet.
Do you keep your US phone and then just purchase another?
We did a change. We canceled our phone lines and we just bought a Google line, Google phone, Google Voice. So anywhere where you are on Wi-Fi, you can still receiving phone calls from the United States with Google Voice. It's a very simple process. You pay a one-time $25, and then they transfer that to Google Voice, and that's it. End of the story. So we kept our American.
And then you get a number.
Numbers. Yeah.
You get a number with Google Voice.
Yeah, exactly.
And that phone number, people call you from the US?
Yeah. Even from Mexico. My family from Mexico calls that number, and I receive phone calls here, no problem.
They don't know any difference.
They don't know any difference. It's an American phone number.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just we don't have the service anymore with our carrier, but it's numbers come through, or we get voicemails or text messages, whatever.
Or some people worry because of now they have the two-factor identification. So you need to have a phone number in the United States for the two-factor identification. So you can use your phone number and still doing your two-factor identification, receive text messages, everything. So you can confirm your accesses and stuff. So that's phone lines. Electricity, it might be a little bit more expensive here, but once again, the apartment where we live here, air conditioning is not a thing. So most of the houses, they don't have air conditioning. So your bill for air conditioning and the weather, it really doesn't need to have an air conditioning unit here. So
do you have one?
We have a portable air conditioning unit that we take off and like a window unit in a way.
We use like a couple times.
We use it like 2 days in a year, and that's it.
Wow.
And that we use it because of the dog. Otherwise, we wouldn't use it, though, because otherwise it will get too warm in here. So, but that's it. And we pay the equivalent. Our bill here is anywhere for gas and electricity between 60 to 90 euros a month for a two bathroom apartment. So, not too bad.
And do they use propane gas there? Somebody told me in Spain they use propane. They don't have
houses,
regular.
They use propane depending on the house, but we live in a modern, brand new built condo. So that also helps us because the construction is more sturdy. And that's one thing that people complain most of the thing here in Porto, like houses are not very well isolated. So when you do that, houses have a ranking from A, B, C, D, E. Our place is a B, so it's the second to the best. So
for energy efficiency.
So that's the thing that if you are buying a condo, you can ask what is the rating for the house. And they tell you because they rate everything. They rate appliances, they rate isolation, they rate heat emission, heat conservation, all that stuff. So that is stuff. Now going to owning a condo, taxes, we pay a fraction of taxes and insurance that we will pay in the United States. Our mortgage, we have a mortgage here. Our mortgage is a fraction of what we have in the United States. So pretty much everything is our cost of living in general, food, day-to-day living. We don't go out too often, but when you go out, even then, it's cheaper than if you go out in the United States.
Well, look at if we go out to dinner for four of us, like go out with friends for four of us. If we were to spend on an average local restaurant out for dinner, if we were to spend more than 50 euros for the four of us with wine, full meal, dessert, everything, that would be a lot.
Wow. So for example, real estate taxes, like we have a 3-bedroom condo. We have 1,700 square feet here in the U.S. in Phoenix, and our real estate taxes are maybe 2,500, maybe a little bit more. Can you give me a rough idea of
We have a
comparison?
2-bedroom. Well, they call it 2-bedroom plus because we have an office space. So it's literally 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo, about 1,100 square feet. We are paying 280 euros per year for taxes.
In taxes?
Yeah.
Taxes.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Insurance is.
And let me tell you, we F up because we screw up when we did the closing for our condo. Otherwise, we would have skipped 2 years free of taxes
Right.
for our place. So,
Wow.
but we're paying
That's incredible
285,
difference.
and our insurance is about $120, $180
A year.
Yeah, we have a car here because as we mentioned, we like to drive, and with the dogs, we like to drive and explore around. And our plates and registration for the car, it was 80 euros for a year. Our insurance for the car, full coverage with towing assistance, rental cars and stuff is 250 euros a year. So it's
Quite a comparison.
yeah. So that gives you an idea. Given, I mean, let's talk about this. Let's be honest. Fuel here is a little bit more expensive because the equivalent is about $8 per gallon.
8 to 9
$8 to
Yeah.
$9 per gallon. But let me tell you and your audience something. Also, you need to understand emissions and consumption, fuel consumption rules and regulations are more strict here. So fuel efficiency are more strict here. So we have a diesel car and it gives us about 70 miles per gallon. So in regular gas cars, they give you anywhere between 40 to 45 miles per gallon. So they have a more strict fuel regulations here.
Do you have any worries about what's happening in Ukraine and with Russia cutting off the gas supply?
In our case, Portugal is
guys?
very self-sufficient. So that's one good thing about that. We don't care. No, we don't care.
Good to know.
And on that note, about 40 to 45% of the energy in Portugal is renewable energy. So it's one of the countries in Europe that has most of their grid connected to either solar panels or windmills. So, and they are
that's a refreshing difference too.
Yeah, they are planning to get to 75% by 2030. So they are going on track. They're going on track. So I think they're going to do it. So and then by 2030, most likely they're going to have a more diverse policy about electric cars too, which we are seeing a shifting here. Everybody's moving towards electric cars here, and pretty much every gas station has an electric charger. And on the highways, every gas station has anywhere between 2 to 3 electric chargers. Any parking lot here has electric chargers. So it's a whole different environmental consciousness here. Also, there is a very strong second-hand culture here in Porto. People like to recycle, and not only on the way that they recycle furniture, recycle stuff, but also recycle. There is bins in every corner that they recycle paper, glass, and they separate organics for compost. So it's a very consciousness, ecological culture, at least here in Porto.
Very progressive.
Exactly.
At least it sounds very progressive as compared to other places.
Yeah.
So excellent. So does Porto have an arts and culture scene? Are there museums or what's that like?
So there's definitely, I mean, when it goes back to the comparison, Lisbon definitely has much more, but Porto has definitely the arts. There's definitely museums. There's the opera. There's concerts throughout the summer, and especially there's concerts everywhere. Like Sal was just going to concert at a local mall. They have every weekend they have concerts. You'll see concerts at the Coliseum. We subscribe to a lot of the concerts there, and they'll have that throughout the year. So you can find it. I would say there's probably a lot more alternative art here per se, and you wouldn't get a lot of as much of the headliners in Porto as you would in Lisbon. I mean, a lot of times if acts are going to come, they're going to come to Lisbon first. But we've been seeing a lot of local Portuguese singers. They'll come here, and there's definitely a lot of art scene here.
It's a more eclectic art scene for sure. It's a more bohemian, meaning there is a small bars that they have singers. It's not headliners. If you are looking for a Broadway type of show, it's gonna be seldom. Probably they have like 2-3 times a year, something like major like that.
So they don't have a theater?
They have a bunch of theaters.
Like a live theater?
They have live theaters. They have tons of that. But again, it's local productions. It's not
right. It's all
it's
in
not
Portuguese.
your production like The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, Disney type of productions, or like Mamma Mia, Broadway. It's nothing like that. There is some of that there are like once or twice a year that they come. Like this year, they supposed to do Chicago, and with the pandemic got canceled. But they have those type of shows, but they are like once or twice a year. But that's why I'm saying it's more eclectic, more local community. There is a thriving music community. There is a thriving acting community. There's a thriving dance community. There's a dance company. There is a choir company. There is a lot of local festivals on the neighborhoods around that they have music. They have local singers coming and doing stuff. So, but it is more like if somebody's moving here expecting that they're gonna go and they're gonna see Broadway shows.
Broadway, forget it.
This is not the place to do that. Be honest to you, I mean, this is not the place to do that. If they expect that they're going to have a Carmen opera with all the production from Frank Separelli, and they're going to have all the curtains and the dressings from Tiffany and all that, it's not going to happen. So
not going to happen.
But if they want to see soccer, they can definitely.
If they want to see soccer, they will see good matches and that. If they there is a huge stadium with a huge, and so that is very nice. If they want to see very eclectic art, if they want to see a lot of new developer painters, artists, and stuff, new galleries that they are opening pretty much every week. There is a gallery that is offering new art, new stuff, and get to meet local people and do stuff. You are going to find that bohemian, you're going to find that unassuming art and music and culture, which is, in our opinion, we like more, because then you feel more like in a part of that experience rather than just being an observer, rather than be just an spectator of that. You feel more like immersed on the stuff because you are present. You get to be closer to the artist. You get to talk to the artist. You get to share the point of view and learn a little bit more of why they do that, what they feel when they are doing that stuff, which for us, in our opinion, is better than being an spectator does, and then when you are done, you just go home and watch it.
Right. Oh, so it sounds like it has a great arts and culture for different people. There's different things for everybody's different.
Exactly.
So they have for the people of that city. So that's great. How about talk to me about food? I love food. So I get hungry just talking about it. I get hungry just thinking about it. But so how's the food in Porto? Is it more seafood, or can you get anything? What's it like? Are there 5-star restaurants? Is it just local restaurants? Tell us.
Once again, you need to understand a little bit of history of Porto. Was part of the kingdom, and then it comes from a tradition that people were very unassuming, very low-key. They nickname Portuguese people tripeiros, and tripeiros in Portuguese means tribe, people that eat tripe. So they have the royalty that eat from the pork, eat all the main parts of the pork, like beef, like meat and the main meaty stuff, and then they left all the innards for the poor people to eat. So Portuguese people from Porto, they learn how to cook the inners and how to make tripes and stuff. So to this day, some of the main dishes in Portugal are very simple, very unassuming. So they still making the tripes. They make bifanas, like sandwiches with pork and shred meat. They make the francesinha, which the way that I describe it is a sandwich on steroids, which they put sausage, steak, ham, 2 pieces of bread, tons of cheese, and then a sauce made of pork with an egg on top. So it's a very simple food. But then, like every other city, they have elevated cuisine. There is a couple of Michelin stars restaurants. There is a restaurant that is called the Jadman. It's a 5-star Michelin restaurant here. But then again, if you are willing to pay 500 euros to go for a meal there, be my guest. So
No
you know,
thanks.
it's like it depends what you want. You go for the bifana that it costs you 2 euros to have a bifana, or a francesinha that on Fridays it costs you 750 euros with a beer and fries, or you go to have a meal for 500. So and everything in between.
Yeah.
And there is seafood.
Do they have the menu del dia
Yeah, they have
like Spain
they call
does?
Prato del Dia.
Yeah.
Prato del
Prato
Dia.
Everybody
del
has
dia.
that.
And then once again, the place where we live is a Portuguese neighborhood. The Prato del Dia bar is between 5 to 6 euros for that, and that
Wow.
includes the dish with a salad, rice, and a drink. Or you go and dessert or coffee. Or you go to the tourist area where Prato del Dia is 10, 12 euros, which includes exactly the same by the Riviera downtown. So it goes anywhere between 5 to 15
Six.
euros, the Prato del Dia, that you can eat that. At good dinner, we have a good restaurant that just compare, like if you compare like Fogo de Chao, which is a restaurant that serves you all you can eat meat, versus the restaurant that we go here that is Casa de Picaña, which has that Fogo de Chao charge you like $60 for the all you can eat buffet meal. Here in the other place, we pay 25 euros for that all you can eat stuff. So it's half the price.
And is lunch the bigger meal there?
Oh, for a lot
Also?
of people,
For
yeah.
a lot of people, but dinner here is not as late like in Spain. Like let's say breakfast is anywhere between 8 to 10 o'clock. Then lunch is between 12
And two.
to 2 o'clock. And then dinner anywhere
Sounds
between
wrong.
8 to 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I know that's brutal as in Spain. So
Well, yeah. So you don't have siesta.
they just have
No
lunch time.
siesta?
Here is a lot of concept with family. So everybody takes lunch, and most of the people they go home and they have lunch with their family. So most of the
So businesses
are
remain
closed.
open?
Yeah.
Businesses remain open as well.
No, small businesses are closed from like
1 till
12:30,
1
1
until-
till 31 to
till-
2,
Yeah.
2:30.
Okay.
But it's not
Not
siesta
as-
official, it's just lunch.
Not siesta as long as Spain.
Yeah, in
No,
Spain,
yes.
usually they close at 1 or 2, and then they don't open until 5 or 4 o'clock. So,
5.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Here it's not.
so
as
here is not
And
that
then
long.
they go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
truly lunch.
That's one thing I would have to get used to, because eating dinner at 9, 10 o'clock, I'm in my like third dream by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome
So-
to our club. Yeah,
Yeah.
we understand.
I'm not getting any younger.
We learned
So-
that by because we are always kind of getting used to, or always used to, kind of the early eating, and we realized
Early
that we
bird.
walk around the neighborhood more, and if we started going out with friends or just going out to dinner at 8, 9 o'clock, it's a whole different scene than it would be.
Yeah.
People always joke about if you go out to dinner before 8 o'clock, that's more of the tourist time.
Right.
Where anything after 8 o'clock, it's the local time. So
Yeah.
you just get used to that.
And going back to your previous question, which tied up with this, for those people in your podcast that they're interested in bar hopping or going out for a drink or dancing or stuff, pretty much all bars here start at 11 o'clock. They don't start before that. So
11 p.m.
11 p.m. Yeah. So because
Oh my God,
most
I may
people,
not
they go
even-
for dinner 8 to 10, 11, and then you go out for that, and then they close at 6 in the morning. So
Wow.
it's a very thriving. There is a lot of bars here. There is a lot of very nice spots. There is a couple of gay bars. There is a couple of sex bars for people that they like that. So it's for a small town. There is a little bit of everything for
A
everybody.
lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. Boy, a bar opening at 11? I don't know if I'll ever make to see the inside of one.
That's what we are talking. For us, it's a lot easier to go around 2 a.m. after we wake up.
Take a nap and then go
Right.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, tell us about the wine. I mean, Porto is known for the wine. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? And
There
all
is,
the different
for
types of
you
Porto?
and your listeners to understand a little bit more, Porto, for the small size of town that it is, there is something like 53 or 54 for the country. Yeah, for Portugal, sorry. There is a 53 to 54 denomination of origin regions, meaning there are authorized regions that they can make determinate wine that is authorized by a council on that. So that tells you for a small country, pretty much all around the country, there is wine. There is some sort of wine.
Wow.
There is wine. One of the bigger regions that there is here is the Vinho Verde, which is the largest region in Portugal. But the bigger region, or the more popular region that most of the people know, is the Douro region, because the port wine comes from the Douro region, and the Douro wines are more popular around United States. So say that there is a little bit of different flavors, different maturities, different types of grapes, different types of mechanics on how they make the wine, depending on what people like. If you go to a store, there is like a supermarket here, and you go that there is, I kid, about probably 8 to 10 aisles of wine and about 4 or 5 aisles of cheese. So Portugal is one of the major manufacturers of cheese and wine. So it's a whole variety of wines depending on your taste, depending on your budget. You can find wines as cheap from €1. And of course, from there on, you can find wines as expensive as 300, 400 euros a bottle. So it all depends your budget. It all depends your palate. When you're talking about wine and food, it's difficult to relate, especially with your audience and with your listeners, because everybody has a different taste. Everybody has different taste buds. So for us, the Vinho Verde region, we prefer that rather than Douro. But it's also for us, it's been an experience because we've been explored some of the wineries in which you do tastings here in the wineries are a whole different concept that we ever experienced in the United States. Meaning here, people serve you the wine, you taste it, and they ask you, they talk to you about the wine, they talk to you about the process, they tell you about the passion of how they came along with this wine, and they leave the bottle for you to finish. And then until you finish that bottle, then you go to the next wine and taste the next one.
Well, we should say the more local ones do that. If you go to tourist areas, they're not going to do that.
That's true.
But we find the local ones where people know you, and it's more small boutique wineries. It's a whole different experience than if you go to the major ones.
I'd be wasted by the time I got out of there.
But and it's you could only do maybe 2 wineries in one day because it could be 4 to 5 hours that you're at a winery, because Sal didn't say, they'll start showing you around the vineyard. They may spend an hour talking about the process of what they do. Like if you go to the Vinho Verde, they talk about how it grows there, what the Vinho Verde region is. Then they'll start you with wine tastings, but it's not just a wine tasting. It's more of, in Portugal, they say petiscos, which it's similar to like tapas, like little appetizers, basically. And so every course would be paired with various wines they have. So you may go through 5 wines, but you're having appetizers or petiscos with that every single one. And they're explaining that. And there's not a rush. You're relaxing, taking your time, just enjoying. And it's a whole experience.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah.
Overall, going back to your questions about restaurants, and overall, people are very proud of what they do here. People, they really want to show you a good time. They are not in the business to turn tables here. So either
that's what I was going to ask too.
Yeah, either if you're in a restaurant or you're in a winery, they're not in any freaking rush for you to get out of there and give you the check and, okay, pay me, and then next thing, you know.
Right, next table.
We were in this winery that is run by this 74-year-old guy that the winery has been in his wife for about 300 years. And we were running late because we got lost and whatever. So we were running late and we told him, we are so sorry, we arrived 1 hour late that we planned. And he said, well, I don't have too much time. I just have to show you very quickly. And 3 hours later, he's still talking to us about the winery and stuff. Like he didn't have any time. So that
Oh
tells
my
you how
God.
proud the people are there and how welcoming they are. Like 3 hours later, this guy is like, yeah, well, my wife can take care of all the other people that I have and all this stuff. So I will take care of you guys and keep talking about the process and stuff. It's very, Portuguese people are very proud. You don't have to have a freaking MBA degree or a stuff to be proud of what you're doing. From the person that cleans the floor to wash the bathroom to the people that there are engineers or have a career, people are very proud and they are very happy with what they do. They choose that path. Yeah.
We were specifically in a restaurant about 2 months ago, and we specifically told the waiter or waitress, please bring the salads or appetizers first and then bring the main course. Don't bring everything together. We don't want to be rushed. So what do? So they bring the salads and we're eating them. And I swear I must have had like 3 bites and along comes the entrees. And we're like, we told you not to give us the entrees now. And we were just so upset. So now what it comes down to is we'll first order the salad or appetizer and we won't even tell them what the entree is until we're finished.
Yeah.
Whereas places like Portugal and Spain, you take your time, you're not rushed, and there's no table turnover.
No.
All right. So tell us about public transportation, traffic situation. Is there any traffic? Do you need a car where you live? Can you get to amenities such as the local pharmacy, grocery stores, and whatnot without a car? Do they have like trams or trolleys in your area?
So definitely the public transportation is everywhere around here. There's a decent train line, a large bus system. Most people, I would say, though, like it's very common that most people are living and working in their neighborhood a lot of times. So they're not going far distances a lot of times. So for example, in our neighborhood, we have a car, but we would really never have to move our car. We go on the weekends maybe, but throughout the week, we have everything we need in the neighborhood. If we need to hop on the train, we can walk 5 minutes, hop on the train, be downtown in another 5 minutes. If we want to walk to downtown, we're 20 minutes walk. So everything's fairly...
How about doctors and hospitals?
Doctors and hospitals, there's a couple hospitals that are close by. We have to go to the private hospital for the policy that we have, but it's like an Uber ride. If we want to take an Uber ride, it would be probably 5 or 10 minutes with an Uber ride, and it would be very little for that. Yeah, and traffic, you were mentioning about traffic, it would be probably in the afternoons that there is
very market peak hours. So in the morning from like 7 to 9, that is like peak time, and in the afternoon from like 4 to 6 is peak hours. But pretty much once you know that, I mean, Porto is a very easy to navigate city, even with a car. I mean, we had a car because, as I mentioned before, we have the dog, and it's a lot easier to be with the dog. Even though in the train system we can be with the dog, they allow you to be with the dog, no problem, as long as you have a muzzle for the dog. You can be
in the train.
You can be in the bus. You can be in the subway, so no problem at all. So
now that's dog friendly.
Yeah, very dog friendly. The city is very dog friendly. So you can go there. And then there is this connection of you have the local subway, the local bus, and then you have this intercity system that is a train system, and like you have 3 hours on train from here to Lisbon. It's a very easy train. You can go to Coimbra, you can go to northern cities, south city, and stuff. So you can connect.
Go to the Algarve too.
Algarve, you can connect. You go to Lisbon, and then from Lisbon you can connect to the Algarve. There is also the Flixbus network here, so that you have those or Red Expressos, which is our local buses. So there is plenty of them. They run pretty much every other 2 hours. So it's a really public transportation for you and your audience to have a little bit of a concept. I would say in Portugal, only 20% of the people from Portugal, they own a car. It's not that common that people here owns a car, because to do through the driver's license process is very gruesome. You have to have X amount of hours driving and getting the stuff, so it costs you money. And there is no, like in high school, that they teach you to drive here. There is no like driving ed education here, so you have to do that on your own. So most of the people don't know how to drive, or they don't even want to go through the bother of having the driver's license. So they rely on the public transportation, and the public transportation is reliable. And when they say that the bus is going to be there at 5 o'clock, it might be 5:01, 5:02, but the bus is going to be there, or the subway is going to be there.
So driver's licenses are not reciprocal. So
They
have to.
They are now. They just actually 2 weeks ago they just changed the law. If you move here, you don't need to exchange your driver's license. You can keep driving with your local driver's license.
We had to exchange it.
We had to exchange it when we came here
From the U.S.?
Yeah.
From the U.S.?
Yeah.
I could drive
Yeah.
without taking a test?
Yeah, without any problem.
We did too, though, with the exchange.
No, but we didn't take a test, but we just exchanged the license. But nowadays, you don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
You just come here and you keep your driver's license from the U.S. and you can drive like no problem at all. So they just changed the law literally 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
As long as you are not older
excellent.
than 60.
I am.
That's the caveat. Otherwise, you have to.
So they make you take a test?
You have to exchange it, but exchange is not the
Exchange is not difficult.
Yeah.
And you don't have to take a test if you exchange it either. You just exchange it.
You just exchange.
Well, that's refreshing.
Yeah.
Because other places, I heard it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Besides,
Here
you have to take the test. You have to take both the
written.
written.
The process is simple,
Yes.
but the bureaucracy you have to go through the stuff. But
Yes, and they say it's very difficult because everything is in their language, and you have to take the actual driving test. And for immigrant or expat, it's a little difficult, especially first coming over.
Not here. There is no test required. So I mean, if you are under 60, you can do it. Or you can keep your license, no problem. If you are over 60, you just do the exchange of the driver's license.
Exchange, and you don't have to do a driver's test.
No, you just have to have a medical waiver. That's the only thing that they ask you.
Okay. Okay. Tell us about the crime. Is there any crime? Will I feel safe going out at night walking my doggy?
No problem.
No problem. We laugh about that because our monster decides to wake up at oddly hours at night and going outside. So some days at 2 a.m, some days at 4 a.m. So no problem. I mean, here in the news, the most horrible thing that you hear is that they stabbed somebody and he was looking for recover, and then 2 hours later they caught whoever did the stabbing here. So you're not afraid of being shot. I mean, like we can wear our
guns?
jewelry and stuff, no problems there. So
there's a joke in Portugal. They always talk about that they need to look for news. They'll talk about like just random things that they're trying to figure out, that somebody lost their cell phone or things like that. I mean, crime just doesn't happen very often here. It's rare that you hear about stabbings, or you wouldn't hear about shootings, because shootings, guns are illegal.
Guns are outlawed?
Guns are outlawed.
They're illegal?
Even local, they tell you this country is boring. Nothing happens here.
I like it boring.
Yeah, that's what we say. We like boring.
I like boring. I don't like going out.
So that ties to what we were talking earlier, a little bit about how safe do you feel as a gay person. And it's like not a problem at all. I mean, we never feel like we have to be worried about the stuff. We never feel like you need to watch your back. I mean, me coming from Mexico, when we visit Mexico, you always have like this apprehension that you need to be checking where you are going, like not to be in the wrong place.
Right.
With that, even when we were in
Exactly.
Houston or in Chicago, we have that apprehension. And traveling around the world, we have had that appreciation, like apprehension when you are in places, even in places in Spain. Like when we've been in Madrid, like, oh, I don't feel sure like about this place or stuff. Here in Portugal, all honesty, I personally, I don't know you, but I personally never feel that feeling that I'm gonna be attacked or I'm gonna be affected or stuff. And you see ladies, like young ladies with mini skirts walking around the streets, and nobody can catcalling them or stuff, and everybody feels very safe and very secure.
I mean, we went out at what, 5 o'clock this morning after Uriel woke up, and we fed her, and we walked downtown to where all people were at the bars hanging out and all that, and just no big deal. People are giving her attention. They're just enjoying the life on the streets. You don't feel unsafe at all. You just feel very secure.
And those people are first going home. Oh my God.
Yeah. And you know, like every other city, of course, there is homeless people. There is panhandlers asking for stuff. on the touristy areas, there is still being
Yeah.
pickpockets and stuff. There is always, no matter where
You
you
have to
go,
watch.
there is always going to be people that they are going to be looking for an opportunity to make money or to take advantage of you. But I mean, as long as you are conscious about that, you take care of the stuff, then you're going to be fine. It's nothing to worry. In general, I would say 99% of the cases here is nothing that you have to be on the defensive. You don't have to worry about anything else. The government here has done a very good job about keeping homeless out of the street and trying to keep people, giving them a decent life, a decent living. And like the drug consumption is very low. The marijuana is the biggest concern here, but that's like everywhere in the world is starting to get more and more common.
Yeah, and the police aren't gonna enforce if you're smoking pot. They don't really care.
There is not open container law here, so you can go and be drinking on the street and no problem. So police actually is just gonna interrupt you if you are doing something like stupid or really wrong. But for the most part, it's a very easygoing. It's like a live and let live type of culture here.
That's what I was going to say too. And here, you guys know what it's like in the States too. So I could go out at 4:45 in the morning to walk the dog, and there's nobody on the street. But I still have that apprehension and that kind of like fear looking over my shoulder to make sure that no one's going to be attacking me, because I live in the central part of the city too. There are some people that are not all there as well. You never know what's going to happen. So you always have that type of concern. It's kind of refreshing.
Well, for you and your audience to understand a little bit more, when we decided to move into Porto and to have the condo, we wanted to have, because we like to travel all around Europe, so we want to have the peace of mind also that when you leave your place, you're going to come back and your place is going to be intact. It's going to be in one place.
Right.
Peace.
Very important.
So we actually been lucky, and we feel comfortable that we are going to come back home and nobody break in, nobody get the stuff. Stuff still happening. I was reading news that there was in this summer over 330 houses broke in all around Portugal. But then out of those 340 houses broke in Portugal, police caught about 200 out of those perpetrators. So police actually works because they don't worry about bullshit crimes. They actually focus on problems that the city has. So they have the time to really resolve issues that they happen and to ensure that you have the safety and the security that you deserve in the city.
That's great. That's like almost between healthcare and crime and safety. That's one of our top reasons to check out a place to move to and live. What about, we touched a little bit about healthcare. So are there a sufficient amount of doctors to patients, to people? And I know that the private system is a little bit different than the public system. So in order to get a visa also, you have to purchase private insurance. Is that correct?
Yep.
At least for a period of time, maybe a year?
You have to.
I'm not sure.
Well, officially, you have to purchase it as long as you're a temporary resident. You have to have private insurance, which would be a 5-year period before you're allowed to have a permanent residency or citizenship. Yeah.
So when can you get into their public system?
You can get, we go back to the Constitution. The Constitution has a chapter that guarantees health care for everybody that is on Portuguese soil. No matter if you are an immigrant, no matter if you are a tourist, no matter if you are a foreign. So as long as you are legally on Portuguese soil, you are guaranteed to have health care, basic health care, okay? So you are the public system. So let's assume that you are visiting here and you fall down and you cut your forehead, and then you need to go to the hospital. They will take care of you. They will patch you up. They will check that you're doing okay, and then they will send you on your merry way for free. Or paying a little quote, which for an ER visit probably is going to be like 25 euros.
So what happens if you're going for residency?
You're
living there full time.
You have full time because you get something that they call número de utente, which is your like patient number that you can access to any clinic. Like where we live, there is a local clinic that we have here that you can go and get your doctor and get the stuff. Mind you, when you are a resident, The major stuff, as Joe was mentioning before, like cancer, HIV medication, vaccinations, like in the case of COVID on stuff, or like now with the monkeypox going on.
Monkeypox.
Yeah, so all those major vaccinations are provided by the doctor, so by the public government. So that's not provided by any private, or there is no Walgreens here that you can go and get a vaccination. That has to be done on your healthcare center. So
Gotcha.
if you are a resident and that's the day-to-day stuff that you need to take care of, you have to go to your clinic and then they will take care of all that stuff for you for free. So that doesn't cost you any money. In our case, our day-to-day checkout, we go with the doctor. Now, going back to the portion of your questions about coverage and stuff, on the public system here all around Portugal, yes, there is a shortage of doctors to cover that. But when you have your private policy, you can go to any private hospital and they will take care of you right away. And if it's something major, like you need a surgery or stuff, there is qualified doctors, qualified hospitals that they can do major surgeries here. So if you are a resident here, there is an array, especially in Porto. In the Algarve, it might be a little bit more limited. Of course, Lisbon has a bigger city, bigger hospitals. But in Porto, there is excellent medical care. There is excellent hospitals. In fact, the University of Porto has a teaching hospital here, which is one of the best in the country for medicine. So it's a wonderful hospital. It has a huge oncology wing. So where people even from Lisbon, they come here to Porto to be treated for cancer. So we are lucky to be in a city that is very welcoming, very advanced, and that so far for whatever our medical needs have been, is been responding. And I mean, during the pandemic with the COVID vaccinations, we were lucky to be here in Portugal where people were wearing masks and they were getting vaccinated. Here, it wasn't an option for people not to get vaccinated though. Because if you don't get vaccinated and then you need to go to the doctor, say, screw you, I'm not going to take you.
Right. That's the way it should be.
You have the right to refuse. So if you get sick and you're not vaccinated, you're on your own because the doctor is not going to see you, or you cannot go to the pharmacies, or you cannot go to the stuff. So.
Yeah, I remember when lockdown, you guys couldn't go anywhere. But
that's correct.
It was a good thing.
Yeah.
Because here in Phoenix, it was like you'd never know there was a pandemic going on.
That's correct.
People with no masks, and
again, it goes back to people are very respectful and very socially conscious. So they know and they understand that there is for the good of the community that what you need to do.
Do you have to pay for the public? So in other words, you're an immigrant. You haven't worked in Portugal and paid throughout your life, like Social Security. Do you have to pay something to the public healthcare system?
No, for that, because you pay that with your taxes. So as soon as you become an immigrant, it's part of your tax quota.
You're always going to pay a little bit.
The Constitution also marks that you need to pay a minimum service fee, but the minimum service fee is anywhere between 10 to 15 euros now. So it's nothing though.
And if you had something really major going on health-wise, you think the hospitals in Porto would be able to handle that and not ship you over to
as I mentioned, there is an oncology center here. I don't think it gets worse than cancer. There might be something worse than cancer, but there is a huge oncology center, and then they can manage that. Any other things, broken bones, there is a good orthopedic clinics here. There is stuff here, so it's not. I mean, it's not a problem.
Yeah, Porto and Lisbon is as far as if you have serious issues that might happen, that's your best bets. Obviously, if you get more in the central part of the country, if you're smaller remote areas, it's going to be hit and miss. You're going to
might have to drive go to either city.
Or travel,
Yeah. Okay. What do you wish that was in Porto that you don't have, that you may have had elsewhere, such as in...
Our friends, that's the only thing we miss. Yeah.
You miss your friends.
Otherwise, we are pretty fine. We can find anything here. We can get everything that we need.
Occasionally, like when I was traveling back, occasionally I'll bring back a few things that we can't find as much here. But you can find almost everything here. But like, for example, since Sal's Mexican, I mean, we'll make Mexican food, things like that. And there's certain things with certain salsas or buffalo sauce or whatever that you can find. It's just much more expensive. But you can find most things, but It just may cost you more, but for the most part, yeah, you can
So,
find.
for the most part, Mexican food there is
Well,
not.
yeah,
You want Mexican food? Come to my home. Yeah, that's not the best
Okay.
Mexican food.
it's not great.
That's a deal.
It's not like the U.S. where there's Mexican foods on every street corner, right? It's
But then
Right.
again, you don't have the influence from Mexico here, so
Right, right.
it's understandable. And pretty
Yep.
much, I mean, when we are part of some of the boards, people get so hung up in things that I consider stupid, like oh, I cannot find my Hellman's mayo here, or I cannot find my Miracle Whip, or they don't have
Yeah.
this brand of pasta that I used to buy in the United
or
States.
Jiffy peanut butter.
Or Jiffy peanut butter, they don't have that. It's like it's
Well, you're not in the United States,
Yeah,
so
that's
you
the
know.
point.
Exactly.
That's exactly
It's
the
different.
point. It's different.
Right.
You will find a couple of things. You have to be creative and find some alternatives and do the stuff. But I would say 99% of the things that we need for food wise, housewife, wise, households stuff, you find everything here. And sometimes it's going to be even cheaper than in the United States. So I would say don't worry about the stuff, be creative. And if there is something that you don't find, you will find a way to replace it.
I think you just have to have an open mind and realize that it's not going to be the same. You're moving to a different country. So
Right.
you're going to find some things that are different. Some things are better. Some things are different than what you have.
I
But
mean,
Of course.
I'm gonna be a little bit blunt. If you move to a foreign country and you are concerned because you cannot find the Miracle Whip, just stay in your country. It's like you
That's
don't
great.
deserve to be in a foreign country. If Miracle Whip is your major concern about being in a country or not,
Yeah, there's no reason that you should be moving.
Yeah.
that's my point.
well, Sal always
Or-
Sal
Or
always
your
says-
chunky peanut butter.
Exactly. Sal always says, like, he would always joke because when he moved from Mexico to Chicago, people will go to Pilsen area in Chicago to be Mexican, right? He's like, I didn't move all the way from Mexico to live in a fake Mexico. I'm moving
There
to
you
the
go.
United States. I'm moving there for a different culture. Same thing here, right?
Right.
We're moving to Portugal, and we're going to experience the culture here. We're not looking for a replacement for the United States. There's things that we
Gotcha.
may like, but at the end of the day, we're going to embrace the culture.
But to summarize your question, pretty much what we mean is the closeness that we have with our friends, and that's all. But we are working to establish a new network here, and that's pretty much it.
Gotcha. Perfect. Can you briefly, because we are running out of time, can you briefly go over the visa process, maybe the costs, and explain to our audience what a golden visa is? And I know there's some limitations now that they imposed on golden visas in certain areas. So can you briefly go over that?
I'm gonna tell you very fast, very simple. So there are two processes. It's either you get a D7, which is a passive income. You need to have enough income to justify about $12,000 a year for one person, or $14,000 for two people. So that's the cap for that. So you need to put together your paperwork and get all that stuff done. It's very simple. You get an application online, you fill it up, and then you put together all the paperwork that they tell you to do there, and then you submit it, and then they approve it like pretty much in like 2 weeks or a month, anywhere like that.
Wow.
The
You
golden
said
visa,
7,000 a person?
about 7,000. The first person has to
12.
have 12. The first person on the increase now, it has to be 11,000 for the first people, and then combined income of 14,000 or 15,000
50% more.
for the second people.
Yeah.
So that's what you need to do as a passive income that they call. So that's the D7. And the only limitation with the D7 is that you have to spend in Portugal 6 months and 1 day in Portugal. So you cannot just live more than 6 months. So within a calendar year, you have to spend 6 months and 1 day,
Majority of your time.
majority of your time.
Can you work?
No, not in Portugal. No, you cannot receive an income in Portugal, but you can, if
Okay.
your income is still coming from the United States, like in the case of Joe, you can still working on that. As long as you don't have a Portuguese income, you can still that's why they call passive income, because it's not an income earned in Portugal.
But you could have you could create a small business.
You
though.
can have a business or stuff too.
So there's a lot
So
more.
they don't want you to
flexibility.
take away from the Portuguese people.
That's
or
correct.
the
Right. They don't want you to
Portuguese
take a
economy.
Portuguese job.
They want you, if you create a restaurant or a hotel or stuff, then you are fine. No
Yeah.
problem at all. You can
Oh.
still working on that. Now, going to the Golden Visa, yes, they just changed the requirements because Golden Visa was designed to promote the growth of cities and to bring investment and to turn around properties that they were either dilapidated or in bad array for people to invest in them and come and live on that. So
Right.
Now, as of the beginning of this year, they limit that to anywhere but Algarve region, Porto, and Lisbon. So those don't apply. Those locations, they don't apply for the golden
So
visa.
all the desirable,
That's
well,
correct.
more
That's correct.
more desirable regions.
And the rule was like you have to buy something that is either 500 and move in on that, or 300 and improve the property for that. 300,000 euros or
Gotcha.
500,000 euros on that. And then the flexibility on the golden visa is that you don't have to live here. You get the visa, and then you don't have to you become a resident, but it's like a temporary resident, so you can come and go as you please. So you don't have to be full time here.
You have to have minimum of 2 or 3 weeks a year.
2 or 3 weeks a year.
Yeah.
That's all what they have.
Okay.
But it comes with a cost.
And it comes with investment, and you have to
Yeah.
justify that. And usually for that type of visa, you do need a lawyer, so they can justify and put together a paperwork, because you have to prepare a business case of what you're doing.
Do you normally need a lawyer even if you're coming over to do the
Usually
visa?
it's relative. I mean, we are by no means we want to give legal advice or stuff. In our case, we did the process on our own, but then I was more comfortable because I speak Portuguese, so I can understand the nuisance of the stuff. Most of our friends that we know here that they're expats, they have hired a proxy or they have a lawyer, and they get the stuff. But in our case, it wasn't necessary. I mean, we had a very good experience. Knock on wood, everything is being fine. So it's all depending on your level of comfort.
The great thing about it is there's in the Facebook, there's
Bunch of resources.
There's a bunch of resources. There's one Portuguese expat board, Americans and Friends in Portugal, and they actually have a lot of the checklist of exactly what you need to do to apply for the D7 visa. So if you follow that checklist, you can pretty much go through the process on your own without having to.
And there is tons of the stuff online. You type D7 visa online, there is Will Speed in Google, a lot of resources and a lot of information. So everything, I mean, as I said, we are not qualified to give enough legal advice, but in a way, it depends on your degree of comfort, of how you feel and how confident are you. As I said, in our case, it wasn't an issue. We even brought our 2 dogs, and we navigate through the process of bringing the dogs, going through customs and all that stuff. So we did it on our own. I mean,
did you put them in cargo?
We put it. Yeah. We had to put it in cargo because of their weight. Yeah. So
you didn't hire a special company that specifically
no, we didn't.
did all that stuff for you?
Own, and to be honest, those were the longest 7 hours flight that I've been taking to be sure that the dogs were okay, because at that point our Labrador was 12 years, one of her, and then the other one was 7 months. So it was a little bit stressful, but we did it, and I cleared customs with them, and everything worked out fine. Everything worked out fine at the end of the day.
Perfect. Good to know. Good to know. So living there for a few years, how long have you been there?
It's going to be 2 years in Portugal, a year and a half here in Porto.
Okay. What would you say are the cons? Are there any cons living in Porto?
I would say, in my case, I think the bureaucracy is the only thing that everything takes a little bit more time to do. And it actually, when joke, like if you are going to do some paperwork, if you are going to do something, don't plan to do 2 things in one day. Just plan to do one thing and expect to take pretty much the whole day to get that stuff resolved, especially if it's a public thing, or like connecting your gas or connecting your electricity, or get the stuff, and be patient, because people, they don't understand how emails work here, so they will never respond on emails. So you have to either go in person or make a phone call, and then be patient about that. Other than that, pretty much everything else is being a breeze, though. I mean, comparing when I moved from Mexico to the United States, it's been a night and day situation. People are welcoming, people are helpful, people truly try to do the best, while in the United States, they just were trying to be rude to you. They don't help you. They don't make stuff easier. I mean, and here, every time people has a way to make it stuff simpler and easier for you, they will go out of the way to make it simpler and help you here. So I was telling Joe what time, I don't know if it's because I'm with you or because I have more experience on this process, but moving here, it wasn't painful at all for me. And I'm assuming for him, it wasn't painful either, because I was kind of like running the show on that part.
You'd know it.
He was an interpreter.
You'd know it if it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, other than the bureaucracy, I think everything else is just a matter of patience and a matter of learning your ropes.
Perfect. In wrapping up, what would you say to our audience if they were thinking about relocating to Porto?
I mean, I would say give it a chance to visit for a couple weeks, see how you feel, see if you really enjoy it. Immerse yourself in the culture. Don't go to all the tourist area. Really go around to the neighborhoods, really explore a lot of the local places to the degree you can, and get a really good feel of seeing how you feel about it. People,
Excellent.
you go for a visit a lot of times and you say, yeah, this is the place I want to live, but it's a whole different thing when you're living there. So you can go as many times as you want, but actually go one time being a local, not as a tourist, so you can really get a good feel to see how
it's important to even revisit. And
I will
back.
tell them, don't come. Don't worry. Don't come. It's horrible. It's terrible. Don't come. Don't come.
Stay away.
Stay away. Stay away from Porto. No, seriousness, do your homework. Be sure of what you want to do. Be convinced. If you're considering to move to a foreign country, be open to embrace the difference. Be open to accept the challenges that you're going to have, because everything is going to be a challenge. Every time that you get out, as we were talking earlier, every time that you get out of your comfort zone, it's going to take a little bit of effort. It's going to take a little bit of sacrifices for you to be in that place. It's going to be taking a little bit of tears. It's going to take a little bit of laughs. It's going to take a little bit of concern. It's going to be a difficult process, but at the end, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a locomotive coming at you. It's a really good place where you are welcome, where you are accepted, where you are loved as you are.
That's great. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this. This was great. You guys were incredibly informative to our audience, and we greatly appreciate it. So thanks again, and we will be talking.
Thanks, Mark.
Good.
Nice talking to you. Be well.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and consider making a donation by clicking the coffee cup on any page at www.wheredogaysretire.com. Each cup of coffee that you buy costs $5 and goes towards helping us continue the podcast. Thank you for your continued support.